The Girl Who Wanted to Belong is a foster care memoir from Angela Hart. This was originally released in 2018. That's roughly about the time I would have read it for the first time. I've reread it recently, and honestly, I didn't remember much about it, which is a good thing because I really thoroughly enjoyed it for the right reasons, insofar as it was a compelling narrative. It was generally very well written. But at the same time, it's a little bit disturbing. It's disturbing that this could happen. And I'll discuss what I mean by that with a spoiler warning, as I don't want to give away too much. But it's a very compelling read. It's very fascinating. But it is questionable. Not in terms of the way it's written, but in terms of the specifics that happen, at least in the second half of the narrative. This is about a young girl called Lucy. She's 8 years old. And it's not really clear why she's been taken into care. She lives with her father and her stepmother. Well, they're not married, but her father's new partner and various other siblings, half siblings, step siblings. And it seems like her behaviour is not great. So her parents, mainly her stepmother or prospective stepmother, takes her into care, basically. And yes, of course, Lucy has some behavioral issues and, can have a temper tantrum like most children of her age. But it's not really clear exactly what's going on. And it's definitely clear that the stepmother, I will just refer to her as the stepmother, even though they're not married, because that's certainly the role she takes. And actually, Wendy, as she is called, demands that Lucy calls her mummy. And that should tell you all you need to know about the kind of person Wendy is. She is not a nice person. She is full of herself. Everything has to be her way or the highway. And she and Lucy obviously don't see eye to eye. But it's not very clear if Wendy has just decided to get rid of Lucy, or if Lucy is actually, causing trouble, trying to drive a wedge between Wendy and her father. And there is a lot of mystery surrounding this and the behaviors, and it's fascinating in that sense because nothing's obvious and it doesn't give anything away too soon. But at the same time, it's kind of frustrating because I wanted Wendy to give answers and I didn't like her. We're not meant to like her. I definitely get the impression that she's not a nice person, but she really irritated me. So it can be quite a frustrating read at times, but it is generally, as I said, well written. And I wanted the best for Lucy. And I have to say that, again, I enjoyed it for the right reasons. To see that there is support for Lucy, that Angela and Jonathan had her back, and well, basically treated her the opposite that Wendy did. Lucy's father is so annoying. He's a very passive character, and it's very clear Wendy has got him wrapped around her little finger. But even that being said, how could he let his daughter go into care just because it's what his partner wants? And the way he treated Lucy, the way he always believed Wendy and didn't listen to Lucy, I just thought, grow a spine. It's one thing to dote on your partner and give in to them and do whatever they want. But when it affects your flesh and blood daughter, it's unacceptable. So, yes, while it's a good read and very fascinating and very eye-opening, it is frustrating. And there are several characters in this who I despised and who I thought were just horrible people and maybe misguided. Maybe the father is not to blame, but I don't agree with that. I think the father is very much at fault here. Maybe not as much as Wendy, but definitely at fault, and it's very frustrating. But I couldn't put it down. It's definitely one that kept me reading right until the end, and I thoroughly recommend it. So, spoiler from now, the thing that I really didn't like. Well, there are two things that I didn't like. So big spoilers from now as I discuss the end. It ends so abruptly. Why did they decide to end it where they did? I don't know. I guess because the book couldn't go on forever and it had to stop at some point. But it ended very abruptly. We do get a fairly lengthy epilogue to catch us up. Because, as I said, big spoilers, basically what happens is Lucy is in care for many months. She thinks she's going to be going home after the wedding. She doesn't. She tends to have a lot of hope that this is going to happen, but it turns out that she's in care for another 7 years. So she's in care for about 8 years, from the age of 8 until 16. And this is all because Wendy is a bitch. I don't understand though, and part of me hopes it's not real because this means that you can fall in love with a person, they can come into your life and be your child's step parent, and then decide to put that child into care, and that child will be in care for 8 years just because the step parent doesn't want them around. What was social services doing to fix this problem? Why did social services just lie down and go, yeah, okay, we won't do anything to actually make this work? You can put your child in care for no obvious reason. We'll just pay for them to be in care for 8 years. Now, it shouldn't be about the money, but when there are many, many vulnerable, endangered children and we haven't got the funds to give them the support they need, why are they then giving money to look after a child for 8 years when there is no reason why she can't be at home? No reason at all, except Wendy doesn't want her around, and it's as simple as that. I cannot believe her father would just leave her in care for 8 years because it was easier than speaking out against Wendy. And as I said, I know foster care memoirs are heavily based on true stories, but also modified to protect the identities of those involved. And I really just desperately hope that it's not true. I feel like it would be a big claim to make, so I feel like it probably is true. But I don't want it to be true that this step parent went, well, I don't like you, off you go into care, you'll be in care for 8 years. How is that possible? That's terrifying. Can you imagine being a child, getting a step parent, and as is often the case, step parents and stepchildren often compete for the other parent's affection or the other partner's affection. So a wedge is often driven between step parent and stepchild. Can you imagine just being in that situation and the step parent going, "Well, I don't like you. Go into care, have your life ruined." Thankfully, Angela and Jonathan are wonderful carers and did their best for Lucy. But that's terrifying. It's more terrifying that social services can let that happen. That they let that happen, that they clearly did not do enough. They did enough to support Lucy while she was in care, but they clearly didn't do enough to get her back living with her parents. And I don't understand how that happened. So it's not a pleasant ending. It's a particularly sad and, quite frankly, disturbing ending that such a thing could happen and that social services could do that they could let a child in their care stay there for 8 years just because the stepmother doesn't want that child around. I think that's disgusting. Obviously, the social workers have to look after Lucy. They can't just not care for her. But it can't take 8 years to tell the stepmother that she's a wicked witch and that Lucy shouldn't be in care for 8 years. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. So, not the best ending. Didn't leave me with a great taste in my mouth, to be perfectly honest. It didn't affect my overall view of the book, but as I said, it did end very abruptly, but it had to end at some point. So, I guess, why not then? It is a very frustrating ending. I'd love to know if you felt the same when you got to the end. It hasn't affected my view of the rest of the book, but it's not left me very hopeful about social services. This isn't present day, of course. I'm not exactly sure when this was set, but it's not too contemporary. So hopefully things are a little bit different now, but that's disturbing that a step parent can come along, kick out the stepchild, and social services are like, okay, fine, we'll look after them and pay for them to be in care for 8 years. No, it's not a great ending to Lucy's story at all. And if it is very much based on truth, I am only sorry to Lucy that Wendy ever existed.